Welcome back. Time for us to go behind the headlines. It's 13 after the hour, and in today's Behind the Headlines, I want to talk about prison labor, one of the aspects of the war on certain American citizens using non-pharmaceutical, non-alcoholic, tobacco-free drugs that often gets overlooked. And there was a story in Huffington Post today that set me about on this little research adventure, and it was entitled Unicor Under Fire for Dominating Small Competitors with Cheap Prison Labor. And the lead is this statement: imagine competing with an American company that pays its workers less than $1 an hour. And this goes on to tell the story of Michael Manch, who's the president of a small apparel factory in Kentucky. This company, he employs 100 people. It's Ashland Sales and Service, and it was in competition for a federal contract to make windbreakers for the U.S. Air Force. Now, the main competitor to this 100-person small businessman, the job creator, Ashland Sales and Service, the main competitor was Unicor, a government-run enterprise that employs 13,000 inmates at wages as low as 23 cents an hour. Now, this little town in Kentucky is called Olive Hill, Kentucky, and Ashland is the city's largest employer. And losing that Air Force contract would basically mean shutting down that factory and pretty much wiping out that little town. So lawmakers stepped in. They got Unicor to back off on this contract, and we didn't end up losing Olive Hill, Kentucky. But it complained about it. Unicor, this big corporation, complained that was hundreds of thousands of jobs for its workers that would be, or hundreds of jobs, for its workers, right? The prisoners, the inmates. Now, the Federal Bureau of Prisons has been doing this. This has been going on since 1934. Okay, I started doing some research into this. Unicor was created all the way back in 1934. And when people take a look at these programs, having inmates do work, they will often point to these statistics. They'll say, hey, these people that do the work have something to do while they're in prison. They're less likely to reoffend, and they're more likely to be employed after they get out of prison. Now, I would look at that and say, yeah, because so many of them are drug inmates who aren't criminals, who are people who can actually do these kinds of jobs and have skills that could be transferable to work once they got out. It's kind of a self-selecting data set right there when you're picking the people who aren't going to have problems and saying, look, they don't have problems. Anyway, other critics are accusing Unicor of shifting its focus from, trying to help the prisoners to actually trying to boost their bottom line, which of course they're going to do. They're a corporation. That's what they do. That's what they're required to do by law, try to increase the bottom line. And that bottom line for Unicor is a pretty nice one, $900 million in revenue in the past year. Another story came up on CNNmoney.com. This was factory owners, federal prisoners stealing our business. This told the story of Kurt Wilson. Now, Kurt Wilson is an executive at American Apparel, Inc. out of Alabama, and they make military uniforms. And he's had to lay off about 150 people over the past year because he keeps losing these military uniform contracts to Unicor, to this prison corporation using imprisoned Americans at 23 cents an hour. Wilson says, according to the story, we pay employees $9 an hour on average. They get full medical insurance, 401k plans, and paid vacation. Yet we're competing against a federal program that doesn't pay any of that. Not only is it not required to pay minimum wage, it pays between 23 cents to $1.15 an hour. It also doesn't have any health insurance costs, because the prisons cover those. And it doesn't have to pay federal, state, or local taxes. We got 8% unemployment for the past 4 years, and here's some good jobs that could be done by Americans who need work. But these people have to, deal drugs, get caught, put in prison before they can get a job? That's the way we do the jobs here. $9 an hour, that's too much to pay you. We're going to have to arrest you for weed first, put you in prison, and pay you 23 cents an hour. Now, you'd think this would be illegal. Of course, we do have the 13th Amendment to the Constitution that says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist in the United States. So again, involuntary servitude, slavery, perfectly legal so long as you've been convicted of a crime. But this is nothing new in American politics. This is nothing new in American business. Look up the concept of convict lease. Like you're going to lease a truck. leasing convicts. This was a system of penal labor that went back all the way to the South and all the way back after the Civil War, beginning with the emancipation of the slaves. After the slaves were emancipated, all these farmers and factories and big business down there in the South had lost all their free slave labor. So what they did is they conspired and colluded with law enforcement back in the day to round up blacks for whatever crime they might have committed, or whatever made up, trumped up charge they could be convicted of, get them sentenced to prison, and then lease them out to private parties. Now, in this case, the leased out private parties, these plantation owners and corporations like the railroad companies, would be in charge of feeding, clothing, and housing the prisoners. Sounds like a private prison, doesn't it? And only in the South was this the major way of that this was done. It was done in the North a little bit with convict labor, but for the most part, it was a Southern kind of thing. And of course, this happened all throughout. This began in 1868 in Georgia. The governor there commissioned for 100 able-bodied and healthy Negro convicts in return for a fee to the state of $2,500. Yeah, $25 per Negro convict. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Unicor and the private prison industries are nothing more than the prisoner lease of the 21st century. It's time we stop this. It's bad for our prisons to be privately run, for profit to be made out of imprisoning people, and especially at a time when so many free people are out of work.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man?